Imagine a world where your haircut is illegal and wearing blue jeans is a crime against the state. In North Korea, a bad hair day can literally land you in a labor camp. We are diving into the 50 most absurd and terrifying rules that control every second of life in the world's most secretive country, from banned sarcasm to mandatory crying. By the end, you'll be hugging your denim jacket. Let's get started. 1. Your hair isn't your own property. It belongs to the aesthetic vision of the state. If you walk into a Pyongyang barber, don't expect to browse Instagram for inspiration because you are legally required to choose from one of the 28 state-approved hairstyles. Men have roughly 10 choices and women have 18. Spiky hair is banned because it's considered rebellious. And if you think you can just let it grow long, think again. Hair longer than 2 inches is often frowned upon for young men because, apparently, it drains nutrients from your brain. Yes, that is the actual scientific explanation they use. 2. If you check your watch, you might think we are living in the 21st century. But legally, you're wrong. Forget the Gregorian calendar that the rest of the planet uses. In North Korea, time literally revolves around the Kim family. You aren't living in the 2020s right now, you are living in Yuch 113. The calendar resets to 0 starting from the birth of the country's founder, Kim Il-sung, in 1912. So, while the rest of us are worrying about the future, they are legally required to date every document, birthday card, and newspaper based on how many years it's been since the great leader arrived. 3. If your wardrobe consists mostly of denim, you are effectively a walking criminal. Blue jeans are strictly banned because they are seen as a symbol of American imperialism and Western corruption. Interestingly, black jeans are sometimes tolerated because, apparently, the color dye changes the political ideology of the fabric. Tourists have even been asked to change clothes before entering certain monuments. I have to ask, could you survive in a world where wearing your favorite pair of Levi's is considered an act of treason? 4. This is arguably the most terrifying law in the books, known as the 3 generations of punishment. If you decide to defect, criticize the government, or break a major law, it's not just you who goes to prison. The state will arrest you, your parents, and your children. The logic is that the seed of dissent must be eliminated entirely from the family tree. It turns every family dinner into a high-stakes hostage situation, where one person's mistake ruins the entire lineage. 5. Do not yawn, do not slouch, and for the love of everything holy, do not fall asleep while the supreme leader is speaking. This isn't just rude, it's considered an act of disloyalty. High-ranking officials have reportedly been executed with anti-aircraft guns simply for dozing off during a military parade. Next time you struggle to stay awake in a Zoom meeting, just be thankful the penalty isn't an artillery shell. 6. Making an international phone call is a crime that can literally cost you your life. Regular citizens have phones, but they operate on a closed internal network that cannot connect to the outside world. To call someone in another country, people often have to smuggle Chinese SIM cards to the border areas and hike up mountains to get a signal, risking execution if they get caught. It redefines the concept of roaming charges when the cost is a firing squad. 7. There are specific days on the calendar where happiness is illegal. On the anniversary of the death of Kim Il-sung, citizens are forbidden from smiling, drinking alcohol, or talking loudly. Even if your child is born on that day, you aren't supposed to celebrate because the entire nation is mandated to be in a state of mourning. Imagine having the government mandate your exact emotional state for 24 hours. 8. When the country ran short on chemical fertilizer, the government didn't just import more, they passed a law requiring citizens to produce their own. Every household and factory has a quota of human waste they must contribute to state agriculture. People have literally been caught stealing poop from neighbors just to meet their government-mandated quota. Would you resort to theft if your freedom depended on filling a bucket with, well, you know? 9. Unless you are a high-ranking male government official, you are walking. Private car ownership is virtually non-existent for the average person, and obtaining a driver's license requires connections and status that 99% of the population will never have. For a long time, there were even reports that women were banned from driving outright, regardless of status, simply because the state decided it wasn't appropriate. 10. If your house catches on fire, your first instinct is probably to save your kids or your pets. But in North Korea, that instinct is illegal. The law states that the first thing you must save from a burning building are the portraits of the leaders that hang on every wall. There have been actual news stories praising mothers who died in fires while clutching the portraits, treating them as heroes for prioritizing the picture over their own lives. 11. Participating in elections is mandatory, but calling it a choice is a stretch. Every 5 years, citizens must go to the polls to vote for the Supreme People's Assembly, but there is only one name on the ballot for each district. While you technically have the legal right to vote against the candidate by using a separate red box, doing so requires you to identify yourself to security officials. It is essentially a census to track who is loyal and who has defected, rather than a democratic process. 12. Religious freedom is guaranteed by the Constitution on paper, but in reality, owning a Bible is a fast track to a labor camp. The regime views organized religion as a direct threat to the state ideology because it places a power higher than the supreme leader. While they maintain a few show churches in the capital to trick foreign tourists into thinking they are open-minded, locals caught practicing Christianity underground face public execution or life imprisonment, along with their families. 13. The internet as you know it does not exist for 99% of the population. Instead, citizens have access to Kwangmyong, a tightly controlled domestic intranet that is completely cut off from the rest of the world. It contains roughly 28 websites, mostly filled with state propaganda, cooking recipes, and insurance information. There is no Google, no YouTube, and definitely no Twitter to complain about the government. Honestly, how long do you think you would last in a world without access to Wikipedia or memes? 14. You cannot just pack up a U-Haul and move to the capital city because you feel like it. Living in Pyongyang is a privilege reserved for the most loyal, healthy, and successful citizens. The city is essentially a gated community for the elite, and you need a specific government permit just to enter the city limits. If you fall out of favor with the party, or if you become too old or disabled, the government can legally evict you to the countryside to keep the capital looking perfect. 15. Sarcasm has officially been banned because the government is worried people will agree with them, ironically. In mass meetings, officials warned that indirect criticism of the regime using humor is considered a hostile act. If you say, "This is all America's fault," with a sarcastic tone when something goes wrong, you can be arrested. It creates a terrifying reality where you have to constantly police not just your words, but the exact tone of voice you use to speak them. 16. You do not get to choose your career path based on your passion or your college major. Upon finishing school, the government assigns you a job based on the state's current needs and your family's social status, known as songbun. Whether you want to be a doctor or an artist, if the state decides the army needs more coal miners, you are becoming a coal miner. There is no resigning, no 2 weeks notice, and absolutely no changing career paths unless the party orders it. 17. You can buy Coca-Cola in practically every nation on Earth, except for two, Cuba and North Korea. Due to strict trade embargoes and the regime's hatred of American symbols, importing the soda is illegal. While some elite hotels might smuggle in Chinese versions for wealthy tourists, the average citizen has likely never tasted the beverage. It's strange to think about. But what is the one specific snack or drink you would be willing to break the law just to taste again? 18. Sleeping in is impossible because the government operates a terrifying communal alarm clock. In many towns and villages, loudspeakers are mounted on rooftops and street corners, blasting propaganda music and news reports starting at 6 a.m. or earlier. You cannot turn these speakers off, and you cannot lower the volume. It is a daily, mandatory reminder that the state is always present, ensuring that your first thought every single morning is about the great leader. 19. Taking a photo seems harmless, but if you crop the frame incorrectly, you are committing a crime. If you take a picture of a statue of the leaders, you are legally required to fit their entire body in the shot. Cropping off the feet or the head is considered a grave insult to their dignity. Furthermore, taking photos of soldiers, construction sites, or anything that looks poor or undeveloped will get your camera confiscated and your memory card wiped by your government minders. 20. For a brief period, the most valuable currency in North Korea wasn't money, but choco pies. These South Korean snacks were given to workers in joint industrial zones and became so popular that they were traded on the black market for massive markups. The government eventually cracked down and launched a propaganda campaign against the snacks to stop the ideological infiltration. Imagine a government so insecure that they view a marshmallow-filled chocolate cake as a threat to national security. 21. You might hate paying your electric bill, but at least you actually have electricity. In North Korea, power is a luxury, not a right. Satellite images taken at night famously show the country as a pitch-black void sandwiched between the bright lights of its neighbors. Even in the capital, power cuts are frequent, and residents often have to use car batteries to power a single lamp. It puts a whole new spin on a romantic candlelit dinner when you are legally forced to have one every single night. 22. If you are an aspiring musician, you better like military marches and accordions. All music is state-controlled, and Western genres like jazz, rock, or hip-hop are completely banned. The only legal pop stars are the members of the state-sponsored Moranbong band, whose members are handpicked by the leader. Listening to South Korean K-pop is considered a vicious cancer that corrupts the youth. Would you be able to survive if the only songs on your Spotify playlist were accordion covers of propaganda anthems? 23. Your social status isn't determined by how much money you make, but by your songbun. This is a rigid caste system that ranks every citizen based on their ancestors' loyalty to the regime. There are three main classes: loyal, wavering, and hostile. If your grandfather collaborated with the Japanese or was a landowner decades ago, you are permanently marked as hostile. This classification determines where you live, what school you attend, and even how much food you receive. You are effectively punished for the sins of ancestors you never met. 24. Family planning is incredibly difficult because birth control is practically non-existent. While not explicitly illegal in the text of the law, condoms and other contraceptives are banned from manufacture and import because the state wants to boost the population of workers and soldiers. You won't find them in stores, and they are frequently smuggled in and sold on the black market for high prices. It's a society where basic reproductive health is treated like a contraband luxury item rather than a medical necessity. 25. Owning a home is technically impossible because the concept of private property doesn't apply to real estate. The state owns every building, and housing is assigned to you based on your job and your loyalty status. There are no mortgages and no landlords, which sounds nice until you realize that because you don't own it, the government can forcibly evict you at any moment if they need the space, or if you break a rule. You are essentially a permanent guest in your own living room. 26. Be very careful how you handle your morning paper. You are legally forbidden from folding, crumpling, or throwing away any newspaper that contains a picture of the leaders. You can't just toss yesterday's news in the trash or use it to pack boxes. Old papers must be collected and returned to specific locations to be treated with respect. If you are caught wrapping your lunch in a page that features the supreme leader's face, you aren't just littering. You are committing a political crime punishable by hard labor. 27. Fashion police are real, and they are patrolling the streets right now. Groups of citizens, often women from the Socialist Women's Union, stand on street corners to inspect passers-by. They check to make sure skirts are knee-length, that no one is wearing clothes with English writing, and that everyone is wearing their mandatory lapel pin featuring the leaders' faces. If your outfit is deemed unsocialist, they can publicly shame you, fine you, or force you to go home and change immediately. 28. Due to the crippling shortage of oil and gas, you might see vehicles that look like they came straight out of a Mad Max movie. It is not uncommon to see military trucks running on wood gas generators. These are bulky contraptions strapped to the back of the truck that burn charcoal or wood chips to create gas that powers the engine. They are slow, incredibly smoky, and frequently break down, but it is the only way to keep the country moving without imported fuel. 29. Possessing a USB drive with foreign media is one of the most dangerous crimes you can commit. Smugglers use balloons and drones to drop flash drives loaded with South Korean soap operas and Hollywood movies into the country. The government views this as ideological sabotage. If you are caught watching Squid Game or an Avengers movie, the punishment can be a labor camp or worse. Is there any movie or TV show in the world that you would risk 10 years of hard labor just to watch? 30. Even the rules of sports aren't safe from the regime's meddling. North Korea developed its own scoring system for basketball because the late Kim Jong-il loved the sport but thought the rules needed improvement. In their version, a slam dunk is worth 3 points. A three-pointer that doesn't touch the rim, a swish, is worth 4 points. And if you miss a free throw, you lose a point. It's actually a fascinating rule set that rewards precision, but good luck getting the NBA to adopt it. 31. If you buy a radio in North Korea, do not bother looking for the tuning knob because it won't work. By law, all radios sold to the general public are hardwired to receive only government-approved frequencies. Tampering with the device to pick up foreign signals is a serious crime. Even stranger, in many households, you cannot actually turn the radio off completely. You can only turn the volume down. It ensures that the state's propaganda is a constant, low-level background noise in your life, whether you like it or not. 32. Choosing a name for your baby is usually a joyful occasion, but you need to check the list of banned names first. It is illegal for anyone to share a name with the current or past leaders. When Kim Jong-un took power, anyone in the country who happened to be named Jong-un was legally forced to go to the registry office and change their birth certificate. Imagine the government telling you that your identity is suddenly illegal just because a politician got a promotion. 33. While most countries have military conscription that lasts a year or two, North Korea takes it to an extreme level. Men are required to serve in the military for 10 years, and women are now required to serve for roughly 7. This means the prime years of your youth, your entire 20s, are spent marching in formation and living in barracks rather than going to college or starting a career. If you had to give up a decade of your life to the army, what is the one dream you would regret losing the most? 34. Math class in elementary school isn't just about addition and subtraction. It serves a dual purpose. Textbooks often frame arithmetic problems using military scenarios to instill patriotism from a very young age. Instead of counting apples or oranges, students might be asked to calculate the number of tanks or soldiers in a hypothetical battle. It is a unique educational approach where learning basic numbers is inextricably linked with learning the country's defense philosophy, ensuring that ideology is part of the curriculum from day one. 35. Privacy. Within your own neighborhood is a complete myth, thanks to the Inman ban or neighborhood watch units. Every cluster of households is monitored by a designated leader who is required to inspect homes at random. They check for unauthorized guests, inspect your cleaning habits, and ensure your portraits of the leaders are dust-free. If you don't report your neighbor for suspicious activity, you can be punished along with them. It turns every community into a spy network where trust is a liability. 36. You have probably noticed that in every photo of Kim Jong-un, the people around him are furiously writing in small notebooks. This isn't just for show, it is practically mandatory. When the leader gives on-the-spot guidance, officials must write down every word he says as if it were divine scripture. Failing to take notes could be interpreted as disinterest or arrogance, which are dangerous traits to display in a dictatorship. It is essentially the world's highest-stakes stenography class. 37. Riding a bicycle seems like a simple freedom, but even that is drowning in red tape, Bicycles are required to have a license plate registered with the government, just like a car. For years, there was also a bizarre ban on women riding bicycles in cities because the late leader Kim Jong-il thought it looked unsightly for a woman to wear a skirt while riding. While this rule has relaxed in recent years, it shows how the state micromanages even the most mundane aspects of transit. 38. The government built an entire city near the border, called Kijongdong, which serves absolutely no purpose other than to look good. Known as the Propaganda Village, it features bright, colorful buildings and electric lights that turn on and off at set times. However, observers with high-powered telescopes realize the buildings are just hollow shells with painted-on windows and no glass. Would you be willing to live in a fake house if it meant you got free rent? Or is the hollowness too creepy? 39. Public displays of affection are strictly taboo and can get you in trouble with the social patrols. You won't see couples holding hands, hugging, or kissing in the parks of Pyongyang. Dating is expected to be a modest private affair, and premarital romance is generally frowned upon by the conservative society. If you try to recreate a romantic movie scene on the streets of North Korea, you are more likely to attract a police officer than a partner. 40. Your wedding day is supposed to be about you and your spouse, but in North Korea there is a third wheel, the state. Before newlyweds can go to their reception or honeymoon, it is customary and practically mandatory for them to visit the nearest statue of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. They must bow and lay flowers at the feet of the bronze statues to pay respect. It is a stark reminder that even on the most personal day of your life, your primary relationship is technically with the government. 41. You cannot simply visit your friend in the next town over just because you miss them. Domestic travel is strictly controlled, and citizens require a specific travel permit to leave their home province. Police checkpoints are stationed on major roads to inspect papers. If you are caught traveling without authorization, you are sent back home or to a detention center. It effectively turns the entire country into a series of isolated cells where you are a prisoner within your own hometown. 42. Every Saturday, citizens are required to attend self-criticism sessions, which are like group therapy gone wrong. You must sit with your work unit or neighborhood group and confess your recent failures to be a good socialist. But here's the catch. You also have to critique your neighbors and colleagues. It is a psychological masterstroke that destroys trust and ensures that everyone is constantly policing everyone else to avoid being the one in the hot seat. 43. Voluntary. Labor is a phrase you will hear often, but it is about as voluntary as gravity. Citizens are regularly mobilized for shock brigade campaigns, where they must work extra hours on construction projects, farming, or cleaning streets for zero pay. These campaigns can last for weeks or months. It is essentially state-sanctioned slavery disguised as patriotic duty, and refusing to participate is seen as an act of political defiance against the regime. 44. If you think insurance fraud is just for criminals, think again. In North Korea, the government does it. The state has been accused of scamming international insurance companies out of millions of dollars by faking disasters. They have claimed massive payouts for ferry sinkings and helicopter crashes that investigators suspect never happened or were intentional. It is probably the only country in the world where the government itself is the shady con artist trying to make a quick buck. 45. Talking about the exchange rate or the price of rice in the marketplace can actually be classified as a crime. The government is paranoid about information spreading regarding the country's economic instability. Spreading rumors about the economy is considered destabilizing the regime. Imagine going to the grocery store and being arrested for complaining to the cashier that the price of eggs has gone up. That is the level of censorship everyday people face. 46. Tourists are often shown beautiful modern computer labs in schools, but it is often all smoke and mirrors. Visitors have reported seeing students sitting in front of computers that aren't even plugged in, pretending to type furiously when a tour group walks in. It is part of a massive, coordinated effort to project an image of technological advancement to the outside world. even if the reality is that most of those screens are just black plastic props. 47. You are required to treat the country's currency with the same respect as the leaders themselves. Defacing, tearing, or disrespecting a North Korean won-note is a serious offense because it often bears imagery of the state. In a country where the currency has suffered hyperinflation and is often worthless compared to the US dollar or Chinese yuan, you are legally forced to treat near-worthless paper as a sacred object. 48. If you are lucky enough to visit the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where the bodies of the past leaders lie in state, you must adhere to a strict dress code and behavior protocol. Visitors must walk through dust-blowing machines and shoe cleaners before entering. Once inside, you must bow 3 times at the bodies, at the feet and both sides, but never at the head. One wrong move or a sneeze in this silent mausoleum could have catastrophic consequences. 49. Every adult citizen is required to wear a lapel pin featuring the face of Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il over their heart. This isn't a fashion statement, it is a mandatory display of loyalty. If you leave the house without it, you will be questioned by the patrol units. Furthermore, you must keep the badge clean and straight. Losing your badge is a genuine emergency that requires a formal apology and investigation before you can be issued a replacement. Okay, we have covered 49 absolute insanities, and only one remains. But before we reveal number 50, it is time for the final verdict. We have seen mandatory haircuts, human fertilizer quotas, and illegal blue jeans. But the award for the most unbelievable rule goes to number 10, saving the portraits from a fire. Why? Because it demands that you override your most basic biological instinct, saving your own life or your family, to save a piece of paper on the wall. It is the ultimate proof of how deep the indoctrination goes. Do you agree, or did the 3 generations of punishment take the top spot for you? Let us know in the comments. And now, our final number, 50. North Korea is the only country in the world that is technically a necrocracy, a government ruled by a dead man. The Constitution designates the country's founder, Kim Il-sung, as the eternal president. This means that even though he died in 1994, he legally holds the highest office in the land forever. The current leaders are merely acting as his representatives. So, strictly speaking, the citizens of North Korea are following the laws of a ghost. From banning sarcasm to worshipping a deceased president, these laws paint a picture of a world where the state controls not just your actions but your thoughts, your fashion, and your very survival. It is a level of control that seems impossible to us, yet it is daily life for millions. Which of these rules would you find hardest to live with, or would you have been arrested on day 1? Drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the world's strangest places, and we will see you in the next one.